Hey, everyone. Today Jack and Wilson is going into the deep dive of one of the video of my sister Lily J. just posted. Lily J., host of Debunk Weekly, analyzes claims made in a video regarding Islam and Christianity. She uses ChatGPT to fact-check assertions about violence in religious texts and the treatment of women in Islam. Her investigation covers topics like mass shootings, verses about killing in the Bible and Quran, and the rights of women according to Islamic teachings. She questions the original video's motivations, suggesting it might be spreading misinformation or stemming from ignorance. Lily emphasizes the importance of fact-checking information found online and encourages viewers to send in videos for future episodes. She appears intent on dispelling what she considers to be misrepresentations of Islam. Ultimately, she highlights the need for critical thinking and verification of information, especially concerning sensitive topics. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, before we get started, I noticed in my YouTube channel analytics that many of you watching aren't subscribed. If you could do me a big favor and hit that subscribe button, I'd really appreciate it. It motivates me and helps the channel grow, so I can create more videos like the one you're about to see. Also, as some of you requested, my team has launched a website where you can read my books and find transcripts of all my videos in the form of small booklets. The link is in video description. We're working hard to produce informative videos daily, along with books and transcripts. I'd love your help in spreading dawah, calling to Allah's message. Please click the join button to show your support. Now, let's dive in.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another deep dive.
It's going to be a juicy one.
Yeah, we're going to be tackling some pretty big questions this time around.
Big questions about two major world religions, actually, Christianity and Islam.
Right. Stuff about violence and the treatment of women.
Oh, and we'll be looking at some pretty important figures, too, like Jesus.
And Prophet Muhammad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So get ready for a deep dive into some sensitive topics.
Yeah, for sure. But before we get into all that, let's talk about where we're getting all this information from.
Right. Our main source material today comes from a YouTube video.
Oh, you know the one.
Yeah, it's called Exposing the Lies, Debunk Weekly with Lily J. Ep. 2.
Okay. And it's from a channel called Cleophy Podcast.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. Lily J. uses ChatGPT in this video.
ChatGPT, the AI chatbot.
Yep. She uses it to fact check.
Fact check claims made by this guy in a totally separate video.
Yeah. So what's interesting is that we're going to be looking at both sides,
Both the original claims and the AI's responses.
Exactly. It's like a double deep dive.
Love it. All right. So this first claim is it's about mass shootings.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, this guy says that Christian-motivated mass shootings basically never happen.
Right. Almost pretty much never happened. Those were his exact words.
But then Lily J. uses ChatGPT to bring up some pretty strong counter-arguments.
Oh, yeah. Like the Christchurch mosque shootings in New Zealand back in 2019.
Oh, man, that was awful.
It really was. And a gunman who identified as Christian killed 51 people.
And that's actually considered the deadliest religious hate mass shooting of the last decade.
It is. ChatGPT also brings up some statistics about mass shootings in the U.S.
Yeah, the AI says that in the last 5 years, less than 1% of mass shootings involved Muslim shooters.
But then on the flip side, it suggests that a huge majority of U.S. mass shooters, in that same time frame identified as Christian.
Wow, somewhere between 60 and 70%.
That's what the AI suggests, and that's why we have to be super careful,
About not blaming a whole group for what a few people do?
Exactly. We can't generalize about entire groups of people just based on the actions of a few bad apples.
It's like saying all Christians are violent just because some mass shooters identified as Christian.
Right, or that all Muslims are terrorists because of a few extremists.
Makes no sense.
Nope, and it's important to remember that these are complex issues.
And speaking of complex issues, how do we even define mass shooting?
Right, it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, but people interpret it in different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole question of motivation.
Like, how do you even determine someone's true motivation for something as horrific as a mass shooting?
That's got to be super hard to figure out.
It is, but what we can do is focus on looking at the data objectively.
And trying to understand all the nuances.
Without jumping to conclusions or making stereotypes about entire groups of people.
I like it. Okay, so moving on to claim number 2. This one's about Jesus.
And his stance on violence.
Yep. The man in the video insists that Jesus never advocated for or committed any violence.
Interesting. But Lily J. brings up some interesting points to counter that.
Right. With the help of ChatGPT, she points to Luke 19.27 from the Bible.
Where Jesus says, "But those enemies of mine who did not want me to be king over them, bring them here and kill them in front of me.
Whoa, okay, that's a pretty intense verse.
It is, and it definitely makes you think twice about this whole nonviolence claim.
Yeah, it definitely paints a different picture.
And this is where understanding historical and scriptural context becomes super important.
Totally different people might interpret this passage in totally different ways.
Right, some might argue that it reflects the harsh realities of the time period.
While others might see it as purely symbolic or allegorical.
Exactly. And then there's John 2.15, which ChatGPT also mentioned.
Which was that?
It describes Jesus driving the merchants out of the temple, you know.
So we're turning tables and stuff.
Yeah, and even using a whip.
Which raises another point. What do we even consider violence?
Right. Is it just purely physical harm?
Or can it be more about using force or aggression even if no one gets hurt?
That's something everyone kind of has to wrestle with on their own.
For sure. Okay, let's move on to claim number 3. This one compares the Bible and the Quran.
Oh, the classic. Which holy book is more violent debate?
Yeah, so this guy is basically implying that the Quran is more violent than the Bible.
But ChatGPT steps in to help Lily J debunk that one.
The AI highlights research that suggests the Bible actually has a higher percentage of references to violence than the Quran.
And we're talking percentages here, 5.3% for the Old Testament.
2.8 for the New Testament.
And only 2.1 for the Quran.
Which is pretty surprising, honestly.
It is, but I think it's important to consider how they even came up with those numbers.
Like, how did the researchers actually define violence in this context?
Right. Did they weigh different types of violence equally?
Those are great questions, and it's definitely something we should always be thinking about.
Especially when we encounter these kinds of comparisons, we gotta be wary of oversimplifications.
Especially when we're talking about complex religious texts like this.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, moving on to the next claim.
This was about Prophet Muhammad and the way he treated women.
Oh, yeah. This guy claims that Prophet Muhammad was oppressive towards women.
But Lily J uses ChatGPT to counter that argument.
She explains that Prophet Muhammad actually played a big role in elevating the status of women.
Back in 7th century Arabia.
Yeah, like he granted them rights to inheritance, education, and protection.
Which was pretty groundbreaking for the time.
Very much so. And this is where I think it's important to remember historical context.
Totally. We can't judge figures from the past by today's standards without considering the societal norms of their time.
It's like looking at a medieval painting and saying, oh, the colors are so dull.
When actually the colors are probably super vibrant back then.
Exactly. They just faded over time.
Okay, so to further address this claim about women, Lily J brings up Islamic hadiths.
Oh, hadiths. Tell me more about those.
Well, for anyone who doesn't know, hadiths are basically collections of sayings and actions attributed to Prophet Muhammad.
Ah, okay, so they offer guidance on various aspects of life.
Yeah, including how to treat women.
Gotcha. And what's interesting is that Lily J points to a number of hadiths.
That actually grant women a lot of rights, even by today's standards.
What kind of rights?
Oh, things like the right to accept or reject marriage proposals.
Okay.
The right to work, buy, and sell own property and not be inherited against their will.
Those are some pretty significant rights.
Right. It really challenges some common assumptions.
And it just goes to show how important it is to consider all sides of the story.
And remember that just like any other text, hadiths can be interpreted in different ways.
And focusing on isolated passages without understanding the full context can be misleading.
All right. Moving right along to the next claim. This one's pretty bold.
Lay it on me.
This guy states that Prophet Muhammad personally killed people.
Like with his own hands?
Yep, including Christians and Jews.
Wow, but thankfully Lily J sets the record straight using ChatGPT.
Yeah, the AI says there's no historical evidence to support this claim at all.
Which just goes to show you how important it is to be skeptical.
Especially when you come across claims that sound sensationalized or outlandish.
Always fact check, people. Always fact check.
Now, ChatGPT does clarify that Prophet Muhammad participated in 9 major battles during his life.
9.
9. But they were all fought in self-defense or preemptively to prevent larger conflicts or to secure peace.
Which brings up that whole concept of just war.
Ooh, yeah, that's a topic that's been debated for centuries.
Like, what even makes a war just? What criteria need to be met?
And how can we apply modern ethical frameworks to events that happened so long ago?
So many questions.
Okay, last claim, and then we'll take a break, I promise.
Hit me with it.
This one's about the Quran and violence.
I sense a pattern here.
So this guy is suggesting that the Quran promotes violence against non-believers.
Oh boy, here we go again with taking things out of context.
Exactly, but ChatGPT comes in to help Lily J provide some much-needed nuance.
Nuance is key.
The AI explains that the Quran actually emphasizes self-defense.
Okay, so fighting is only allowed when the Muslim community is under attack.
Or repressed.
Ah.
And the goal is to protect their faith and establish peace.
Interesting, ChatGPT also points out that out of the 5 verses in the Quran that mention killing,
3 of them actually emphasize the gravity of unjust killing.
so only 2 relate to self-defense during war.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which just goes to show how misleading it can be to cherry-pick verses.
Right, you got to consider the entire text and the overall message.
So wow, we've covered a lot of ground already. It's been quite a journey. Unpacking all these claims and seeing how ChatGPT was used to fact-check them. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, it's definitely been a lot to process,
That's for sure.
but it's been fascinating to see how AI can be used to analyze and contextualize this kind of information.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool for sure.
But I think it's also important to remember that AI isn't perfect.
Of course, it's only as good as the data it's trained on and the people who programmed it.
Exactly. We can't just blindly accept everything ChatGPT says is gospel truth.
That's a great point. We still need to use our own critical thinking skills and question the information we're getting, even if it's coming from a seemingly objective source like an AI.
Well said. I think one of the big takeaways for me is how important it is to be aware of our own biases.
Oh, totally. We all have biases, whether we realize it or not,
And those biases can really influence how we interpret information.
especially when it comes to sensitive topics like religion,
Right, it's so easy to fall into the trap of confirmation bias
which is basically just looking for information that confirms what we already believe.
and ignoring anything that challenges our beliefs.
And that's why it's so crucial to actively seek out different perspectives.
And be open to the possibility that we might be wrong.
Sometimes the most valuable insights come from the people who disagree with us.
I couldn't agree more.
You know, another thing that really struck me about this video was Lily J's approach to debunking these claims.
What do you mean?
Well, she didn't resort to name-calling or personal attacks.
You're right, she kept things pretty factual.
Yeah. Her tone was calm and respectful, and she even managed to inject some humor at times.
It was actually pretty refreshing.
I know, right? It's a good reminder that we can disagree with someone without being nasty or disrespectful.
Absolutely, disagreement doesn't have to equal hostility.
Exactly. In fact, when it's done respectfully, disagreement can lead to some really productive conversations.
It can help us learn and grow and maybe even change our minds about certain things.
And sometimes that's a good thing.
For sure.
So what do you think is the best way to have these kinds of conversations about religion and beliefs, especially when people have such different viewpoints?
Well, I think it starts with approaching the conversation with humility.
Humility.
Yeah, recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
And that we can always learn something new from other people.
Exactly. And it's about really listening to the other person.
Trying to understand where they're coming from, even if we don't agree with them.
And looking for common ground, even when it seems like there's none to be found.
I like it. You know, thinking back to this whole AI thing, it's pretty crazy how quickly technology is advancing.
It really is.
And it's starting to play a bigger role in our lives in ways we never could have imagined.
Like AI analyzing religious texts and fact-checking claims.
It's wild.
It makes you wonder what the future holds for religion and technology.
Like, will AI eventually replace religious leaders?
Or will it just be a tool that helps us understand our faith better?
I guess only time will tell.
But it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Well said.
So I think that's a good place to wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Agree. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still so much more to explore.
And we'll do just that in the next part of the show.
So be sure to tune in next time.
We'll be diving even deeper into the world of religion, technology, and the importance of critical thinking.
Can't wait.
Yeah, it has been a lot.
A lot to process.
Oh,
We've covered so much ground.
Yeah, from mass shootings to biblical interpretations to AI and religion.
It's like a whirlwind of information.
But it's all connected in a way, right?
I think so. It all comes back to this idea of critical thinking.
That's the key takeaway for me.
Yeah, we can't just blindly accept everything we hear or read.
Especially online.
Exactly. We got to question everything.
Dig a little deeper.
Do our own research.
And be open to different perspectives.
And speaking of perspectives, it's interesting to think about how our own biases can shape how we see the world.
That's a huge one.
Yeah, like we might not even realize it, But we all have biases that influence how we interpret information.
And it's so easy to fall into that trap of confirmation bias.
Totally. Where we only look for information that confirms what we already believe.
It's like wearing those horse blinders.
You just see what you want to see.
And that's why it's so important to actively seek out different viewpoints.
Yeah, even if they make us uncomfortable.
Even if they challenge our deeply held beliefs.
Because sometimes those are the perspectives that help us grow the most.
I like that idea of growth.
Yeah, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about being open to learning and evolving.
And that's what makes these conversations about religion and beliefs so fascinating.
I know, right? They can be challenging, but they can also be incredibly enriching.
As long as we approach them with respect and an open mind.
Exactly. It's not about trying to convert anyone or prove anyone wrong.
It's about understanding each other better.
And learning from each other's experiences.
Yeah, and maybe even finding some common ground.
Which brings me to something I really appreciated about Lily J's approach in that video.
Oh, what's that?
Well, she managed to debunk those claims without being disrespectful or condescending.
Yeah, her tone was very matter-of-fact.
And even a little humorous at times.
It was like she was having a conversation with the guy, not attacking him.
Which is such a refreshing change from all the negativity and hostility we see online.
Totally. It shows that you can have strong opinions without being a jerk about it.
And I think that's something we can all learn from.
So how do you think we can encourage more of that kind of respectful dialogue, especially in a world that feels so divided?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is, but I think it starts with each of us individually.
You know, making a conscious effort to listen more and judge less.
Yeah. And being willing to have those tough conversations even when they're uncomfortable.
And remembering that it's okay to agree to disagree.
Sometimes the most valuable relationships are the ones where we can disagree respectfully.
I love that idea. You know, going back to this whole AI thing for a second, it's pretty mind-blowing to think about the potential impact of this technology.
Oh, yeah. It's already changing the world in so many ways.
And it's only going to get more advanced.
Which is exciting, but also a little scary.
I know, right? It's like we're stepping into uncharted territory.
Especially when it comes to things like religion and spirituality.
Like, how will AI shape our understanding of faith?
Will it create new religions?
Will it challenge existing ones?
So many questions.
But it's definitely a conversation worth having.
Yeah, we got to stay informed and engaged.
And keep asking those tough questions.
So what's the biggest question that's been swirling around in your mind after all this?
That's a good one. I guess it's this. How do we stay grounded in our own values and beliefs?
In a world that's constantly bombarding us with new information and new ideas.
Exactly. How do we filter all that noise and figure out what truly resonates with us?
That's the challenge we all face, isn't it?
Especially in this digital age where information overload is the norm.
It is, but I think the key is to be mindful.
To be intentional about what we consume and who we listen to.
And to always remember that we have the power to choose what we believe.
We don't have to blindly follow the crowd.
We can think for ourselves.
And create our own paths.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah, it's all about taking ownership of our own beliefs.
And living authentically.
And that's something worth striving for.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a good place to pause for now.
Yeah, let's give our listeners a chance to digest all this.
And maybe even start some conversations of their own.
That's what we hope for.
So until next time, keep exploring those big questions.
And keep diving deep.
That's all about the journey.
It really is.
Yeah, like we're all just trying to figure things out.
One step at a time.
And it's okay to not have all the answers.
In fact, I think that's where the real learning begins.
When we admit that we don't know everything.
And that we're open to new ideas.
Yeah, even if those ideas challenge our existing beliefs.
Because that's how we grow.
Right. It's like that saying, the only constant is change.
I love that quote.
Me too. It's so relevant to everything we've been talking about.
Like the world is constantly changing. Technology is advancing. New information is emerging.
And we got to be able to adapt.
And evolve.
And keep learning.
Which is what makes life so exciting.
It really is. There's always something new to discover.
And new perspectives to consider.
So, yeah, I guess the main takeaway for me is that it's okay to be a work in progress.
Totally. We're all works in progress.
And that's something to celebrate.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on.
I agree.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you, as always.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to all our amazing listeners out there,
thanks for joining us.
We hope you enjoyed this deep dive.
And that it sparked some interesting thoughts and conversations.
Remember, keep those questions coming.
Keep those minds open.
And keep diving deep.
Until next time.
Stay curious, everyone.
Thank you for joining us for today's podcast. I hope you've gained some valuable insights. If you're a truth seeker, yearning for divine light and ready to step out of darkness, Now is your moment. The truth is that Allah is the one and only creator of the universe. He has sent over 124,000 messengers and prophets to guide humanity, starting with Adam and culminating with the final messenger, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon them all. If you resonate with this message, you might be ready to embrace Islam. Simply recite the Shahada, the Islamic declaration of faith. For further support, feel free to join our WhatsApp group. You can send us a private message there. The link is in the video description. Don't wait until it's too late. We look forward to connecting with you soon.